Good evening. There's been more serious disruption on the railway network today with 75 cancellations. It's because of a continued shortage of drivers at London Midland.
Today, bosses faced tough questions from one of the region's rail watchdog bodies. Our transport correspondent Peter Plisner has this report.
Sessions in the simulator. Training like this provides vital knowledge for drivers, but it takes time. Steve Mayle is one of the latest to undergo training.
You've got a lot to go through. There's a lot of rules and regulations to follow. Very in-depth. It's a very safety critical role. You're responsible for hundreds of people's lives, thousands of people's lives every day. You can't take any risks.
On average, it takes around 12 months to train a new driver, including sessions on simulators like this. But when drivers leave the company, they only have to give 3 months' notice. If too many leave at once, as has happened here at London Midland, you've got a problem. And that's exactly what's happened with more than 30 drivers leaving in recent months. The result has been scores of cancellations and disruption to passengers. Today, there were more than 70 cancelled trains.
Trains are often delayed, or there aren't enough staff on this, so sometimes it gets cancelled and it's not good enough really.
Like basically I'm paying like over 1,400 quid for a season ticket and you can't even get a seat half of the time.
Normally we can cope well with a small, what we call vacancy gap.
Today, company bosses faced tough questioning from the region's transport watchdog. Councillors made it clear just how disappointed they were at the latest disruption. Today, it's emerged that management and unions have signed an agreement for more flexible working, which should help the situation, although it's still likely to be December before things get back to normal. But the bad news is there's likely to be even more disruption tomorrow with scores more cancelled trains. Peter Plisner, BBC Midlands Today.
Well, we're joined now from Birmingham Snow Hill Station by Richard Brooks, who's London Midlands Commercial Director. Thank you for your time this evening. Why have you lost so many drivers in the last 2 months?
I mean, there's always been natural movement within the industry in terms of drivers moving from one company to another. So there's a number of reasons, but as I say, the key challenge we've got is the fact it takes so long to train a driver compared to the time that a driver has to give us in their notice period.
But that's the same for other train companies. How has it got to the point when you're cancelling 75 trains in a day? Are you running an inefficient business?
No, not at all. And the first thing I'd like to say is, as I said earlier, is to personally apologise to any passengers who are impacted upon this. But we are bringing measures into place. As has been said, we've had very constructive discussions with our driver representatives, and we will have the service stabilised in the near future.
But you've got to the point now you're cancelling 75 trains a day. We asked some of our viewers, your customers, for their views. I'd just like to read you one. Clive Chapman says, appalling services lately. He claims he was one of 200 people a few weeks back waiting for London Midland train that was cancelled. He says, sort it out, London Midland. You're worse than the old BR at the moment. So when will you sort it out?
Well, certainly I do accept some of the comments that have been made. In terms of getting to a reliable service, we have moves in place for when the timetable changes on the 9th of December. However, in the meantime, we've also reached some agreements with our drivers. We have got more flexibility of working in the next few weeks. While I can't promise that is going to eradicate cancellations, it will certainly minimise cancellations in the coming weeks.
Well, what do you mean by minimise?
Well, it depends day to day, and as I say, the key for me now is to ensure that we get vital information out to our passengers. We'll be doing that on a daily basis. I can't say how many it's going to be a day, but what I can say is we'll do our level best to get that information out to our passengers as early as we possibly can.
So it sounds as though these cancellations are going to continue until December when the new timetable comes into force. Do you really think that's acceptable?
I certainly recognise that, the challenges that our passengers face for this. In terms of the measures we've got in place for December, we can't bring them in until then.
So passengers are just going to have to put up with it? Cancelled trains?
There are going to be some cancelled trains, and I say my commitment is to minimise that disruption and to make sure that we provide reliable and robust information for our passengers.
And what about compensation for people who've had their journeys cancelled?
Yep, absolutely, and if people want to look at our website, that's where there's information on any cancellations and also arrangements for our compensation regime.
So any passenger who's had their train cancelled will be compensated for that?
As I say, we have a process in place.
Well,
that
yes or no, will they be compensated or not?
It depends on the level of the disruption, but certainly we have measures in place to do so.
OK, Richard Brooks, thank you for joining us this evening.
And we've been asking for passengers' experiences of travelling with London Midland. We'd love to know what you have to think about your experience. You can contact us via email, Facebook and Twitter, and we'll have some of your views later in the programme.
Well, coming up later in the programme.